In the late 19th century, the golden age of sail was dying a slow, painful death. Everywhere you looked, massive steel-hulled steamships were taking over the oceans, fueled by coal and running on strict, predictable schedules. For wooden sailing ships to survive, they had to do something radical. They couldn't outrun the steam engines, so they had to outcarry them. They needed to become giants. On a freezing December morning in 1888, a shipyard in Waldoboro, Maine, launched a vessel that looked like nothing else on the water, the Governor Ames. It was named in honor of Oliver Ames, who was serving as the governor of Massachusetts at the time. Upon her launch, she wasn't just a local curiosity. The Governor Ames was officially the largest cargo vessel in the entire world. But if you look at the history books, you'll find a bit of a maritime rivalry. Technically, a massive vessel called the David Dow's had been built on the Great Lakes a few years earlier with 5 masts. And yes, the David Dow's was actually longer than the Governor Ames, but the David Dow's was much narrower and shallower, meaning its total volume and actual cargo capacity were significantly smaller. More importantly, the David Dow's wasn't a true schooner. Her very front mast was rigged with heavy square sails that required men to climb high into the rigging to tame them. The Governor Ames was different. She was the first pure, true 5-masted schooner. Every single one of her 5 masts carried fore and aft sails, meaning they ran parallel to the ship, allowing the entire vessel to be operated without a single man ever having to leave the safety of the deck. Before the Governor Ames tasted saltwater, old-school naval architects openly laughed at the design. They believed building a 5-masted ship out of wood was structurally impossible. Wood bends. When a ship that long rides over massive ocean waves, the bow and the stern can hang in the air while the middle sinks, or vice versa. Shipbuilders call this hogging, and on a wooden ship of this scale, the immense pressure would normally snap the spine of the vessel like a twig. To fight gravity in the ocean, master shipbuilders had to build a tank. They crafted her frame out of massive, ancient Virginia white oak, locking the timbers together with heavy iron strapping. When you looked at her from the pier, she didn't just look long, she looked like a floating wall. She was over 250 feet long, 49 feet wide, and had a massive cargo hold that dropped 21 feet deep. Her 5 identical masts stretched 115 feet into the sky, holding a staggering 1.5 acres of canvas sail. But her true genius wasn't her size. It was her economy. The famous, elegant clipper ships of the past required an army of 40 sailors just to manage the rigging. The Governor Ames turned to technology. She carried a small steam-powered donkey engine on her deck. When it was time to hoist those massive sails, the crew didn't use muscle. They wrapped the ropes around steam-powered winches. Because of this absolute titan of the sea could be sailed by just 11 men. But revolutionary designs usually come with teeth, and her debut was an absolute disaster. Just days after launching, she set out on her maiden voyage to Baltimore. She was sailing in ballast, meaning her belly was completely empty of cargo. Without thousands of tons of weight to hold her down, she sat incredibly high out of the water, floating like a massive cork. When she sailed straight into a brutal Atlantic gale, she became a victim of her own massive surface area. The screaming winds caught her towering sides. The strain on the unyielding rigging was too much. With a sound like artillery fire, her mainmast snapped, cascading down and tearing 2 other masts away with it. Stripped of her power, she washed aground. Critics rejoiced, claiming the 5-masted experiment was officially dead. They were wrong. The ship was successfully refloated and towed back to port. Engineers heavily reinforced the vessel, rebuilding her with slightly shorter, sturdier masts to handle the intense ocean winds. Fully repaired, she set out to prove her worth, embarking on an epic voyage from Maine all the way to Buenos Aires, Argentina. Packed in her holds was a staggering 1,896,000 board feet of spruce and pine lumber. The cargo alone was valued at nearly $30,000, a massive fortune at the time. It was officially recorded as the largest or second largest cargo ever carried by an American vessel up to that point in history. For the next 20 years, she proved her doubters wrong, moving millions of feet of lumber and thousands of tons of coal along the eastern seaboard, and even surviving the terrifying trek around Cape Horn. By 1909, the aging wooden giant was starting to feel her age. Her wooden joints groaned under the weight of decades of heavy hauling. In early December, she left Georgia, packed to the absolute limit with heavy pine railroad ties piled high on her decks. 4 days into the voyage, she sailed directly into a blinding winter storm right off the coast of North Carolina. She was entering Wimble Shoals, right next to Cape Hatteras, an area globally feared as the graveyard of the Atlantic. At 3 o'clock in the morning, the ocean turned into a washing machine. A driving, freezing rain completely blinded the crew. Suddenly, a massive wave slammed into the stern, smashing her steering gear to pieces. Out of control and completely at the mercy of the currents, the massive wooden ship struck the shallow sands of the shoals at full speed. The impact was catastrophic. The thousands of tons of heavy pine lumber trapped inside her hold instantly turned into a battering ram. As the waves rocked the ship, the cargo smashed against the hull from the inside out. Within just 2 hours, the raging Atlantic completely shredded the wooden giant into toothpicks. There were 14 souls on board that night, including Captain King and his wife. As the hull disintegrated beneath them, the terrified crew scrambled up into the freezing rigging, screaming over the roar of the gale. In a heartbreaking final act of desperation, the crew actually lashed the captain's wife to the rigging to keep her from being swept away by the boiling seas. But one by one, the 5 great masts snapped and collapsed into the black water. Only one man survived, a sailor from New York named Joseph Spearing. Realizing the ship was doomed as the keel bounced violently against the shoals, Spearing jumped overboard and managed to claw his way onto a floating hatch cover. From his fragile raft, he watched in horror as the Governor Ames completely broke up and sank. All alone, Spearing clung to the wood in the freezing ocean for over 12 grueling hours. He was half dead from hypothermia and shock when the crew of a passing steamer, the Shawmut, spotted him and lowered a lifeboat. Joseph Spearing arrived in Philadelphia on Christmas Day, the lone witness left to tell the story of how the world's first true 5-masted schooner met her end. Today, the shattered timbers of the Governor Ames still sit beneath the shifting sands of Wimble Shoals, a ghost of the brief, aggressive peak of the American wooden shipbuilding empire.